Welcome to So Much Fun. I'm Colleen Murphy, and I've been teaching sewing for over 24 years. I get the question, what would I recommend for a sewing machine? So many of my students who come here do not own a machine. That's one of the reasons they come to me. They get to try out the various models that I have in my classroom. But then at some point, if they really like it, they want to have their own machine. So they turn to me and they ask, well, which machine do you think I should get? That's a really hard question to answer because it's really going to vary from person to person as to what you are wanting to sew, whether you want to be making garments, whether you want to quilt, make handbags, just do alterations. So your reason for getting a sewing machine is going to vary. And then too, how much are you willing to invest in it? So you have to think about the features that you would want on a sewing machine and your reason for having a sewing machine and how much would you like to spend. So we'll kind of look at it from those standpoints. What I say is my own opinion. I'm going to talk about 9 different brands of sewing machines because I've owned 9 different brands of sewing machines. So I'm just going to give you my personal experience and my personal thoughts. I'm not trying to sell any kind of machine whatsoever. I'm not associated with any company at all. So this is just my opinion. And I have been sewing since I was 12 years old. So I have been sewing a very long time. And throughout the years, there have been some good ones and some bad ones. And that doesn't mean because I had a bad experience with a particular brand that you would have a bad experience with that same brand. But I'm just going to tell you how it has been for me. I think that's a fair way of doing it. So I started out sewing at the age of 12. And really, I didn't do much with it at that age. But when I graduated from college, my mother gave me her Kenmore sewing machine. So that was officially my first machine. And this was back in 1964, and all it did was a straight stitch. Well, I was happy to have it. She had sewn on it for 20 years and had no problems with it, gave it to me, and it just did a straight stitch. That's all it did. But that was fine. And so after about 5 years, she decided that I really was serious about learning sewing and just sewing in general. So she gave me what was at that time would have been considered the top of the line Singer sewing machine called Golden Touch and Sew. And this was during the time when cams were used to make decorative stitches. So this is a very long time ago. And I sewed on that for about 25 years. Well, the machine was pretty good except when it came to buttonholes. And the buttonholes were horrible. And what that experience told me that whenever I would shop for a sewing machine and would get a demonstration, I wanted to see how the buttonholes were made because I didn't want another machine that had given me as much trouble as that Singer had. I don't care if it was the top of the line at that time, it made horrible buttonholes. So from that point on, I always questioned the salesperson about the buttonholes. So after about 25 years, like I said, I decided that I wanted to get an upgrade. I want to go to another machine. So this would have been in the mid-80s. And I bought my first Bernina. And I found that one to be the best for me at that time. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't considered the top of the line machine, but it was one of the first electronic machines. I think the number on it was like 1150, I believe. It's been so long ago, I'm not really sure. But it was a great machine, did everything I wanted it to do. I was impressed with how it made buttonholes. I was very happy with how it made buttonholes. And so I sewed on that for a few years. And then in the early 90s, embroidery modules came out. And I thought, well, I've got to get into that too. So I found out that Pfaff had a sewing machine, embroidery machine combination. And so I decided to get one of those. Well, the embroidery software was very difficult, but I plowed my way through it and I did learn how to use it, but it was not user-friendly. And I did use it for a while. I had what was considered the top of the line sewing machine. Again, I can't remember the number on that machine, but I'd say I kept that one probably a good 5 years, maybe a little bit longer. In 1999, I decided to open my sewing school. Well, when I did, I knew that I couldn't afford, for one thing, to buy a whole room full of sewing machines, new ones. So what I did, I went to flea markets and yard sales, and I bought machines, and I might pay like $35 for one. And now these are mechanical ones that, you know, had a zigzag stitch on them and maybe have a few other stitches. And I would clean them, and I would make sure they worked good. And so I had my Bernina sewing machine in the classroom, and I had whatever I could pick up to use in my classroom. Well, people would sew on them, and they decided they kind of liked it. So then I would sell it to them and then take the money and save up my money until I could start buying some new sewing machines. So today in my classroom, I have, well, I would say 3 Berninas, 2 Elnas, 2 Jukis, and a Viking. So I have quite a few machines, enough for everyone who comes to class. The Bernina, by far, is my favorite. I'll have to say that. But I know it's not for everyone. Usually people are like, they love their Bernina, and then others love their Janome, or they love their Viking. You know, I think you have to find what it is that you really like. But the Bernina for me has been the best. And actually I've had 9 of them, so I should know from that experience that it's good. And you know, it's not really, well, it is, a lot has to do with the machine, but it also is the dealer. Because when you buy a brand new machine, you'll more than likely you're going to buy it from your dealer. Well, the service you get is part of the price that you're paying. I mean, you can buy machines online. You can buy them on eBay, of course. And I do have a couple here that I bought on eBay. But I bought them with the understanding that I wasn't really going to depend on a dealer for it. Because the dealer should provide you with classes, instruction on how to use it, and there should be a warranty with it too. You need to find out what that is. And like I think for my Berninas, it was like 5 years. But you know, you just need to ask and talk about that warranty because it is important. I'll give you an example of one. I had a Bernina here in class, and it was a summer day, and when I was teaching class, I had a morning and an afternoon class at that time. The machine was used in the morning. In the afternoon, we went to turn it on, and it didn't work. And I'd only had it for a few months. And so I couldn't figure out what had happened. I mean, it was just dead. So I called the dealer, and he said probably there had been a power surge and that the circuit board had been damaged. Well, it was under warranty, and so he replaced that circuit board at no charge. So that's one of the advantages of when you buy a new machine. If you buy it from a dealer and you've got a warranty, if something should go wrong, then you should be covered for that. But you need to talk to the dealer and have confidence in the dealer. Not only have I had 9 different brands of sewing machines, I have dealt with 8 different dealers. And some of them aren't very good. And I'm not giving out names of any dealerships. But to tell you how important it is for me personally, I drive 2.5 hours from my town to a dealer that I know will be honest with me, will give me the proper service, and I have complete faith in this person. I also could go to a dealer that's probably a mile down the road from where I live, and I won't do it because I don't have confidence in the dealership. So, you know, each situation where you live, you may have wonderful dealers. I don't know. But if I don't feel confident in the person who's here in town, I have no objection in driving someplace else to get the service. So you really need to think about that. You know, some people aren't completely honest. They'll promise you a lot, but then if something should happen, you don't know whether or not they're actually going to honor their word. And I have had that to happen, and it's very disappointing, it's very upsetting, and it costs me a lot of money. So you've got to be careful who you buy from. And if you're not buying a brand new machine, if you feel like you can't afford to get one of the high-end machines, you want to go with a used machine, you're going to buy it on eBay, you know, you have to go into it not knowing for sure if it's going to work, and if it's not going to, where can you go to get it to work? So you have to consider those things. We have to be very careful when you buy online. Most of the time I've been very happy with it, but occasionally I haven't been very happy with it. Now, the different brands that I've had, like I say, I've had Kenmore, Singer, Bernina, Pfaff, Brother, and Brother and Baby Lock are essentially the same. I think they're the same company, but I've had a couple of Brothers, was very happy with them in class. After a while, I did sell them. Most of the time, I just sell them to my students. They had been using them. They liked them. They were happy with them, so that went well. But the reason I didn't want to keep the Brother was because I found the Brother worked great as long as you were using medium weight fabric like cotton, no problem. But if you were using denim or a heavyweight fabric or something very thin, on either end, in either very thin or very thick, the Brother had trouble with it. And it would tend to what I call eat the fabric. So, most of the time, no issues. But then if someone decided they needed to work on a pair of jeans, then we'd have some problems. So I got rid of the Brother. And also Necky. I've had Necky, it's been a few years ago, and actually my very first machine that I learned to sew on was a Necky, and this was in the school that they had Neckys. Really like the Necky. I think for the price, it's one of the best buys you can make. But you don't see dealerships very often for Necky. I think you probably would have to buy one online. I don't know of a local dealer here. We did have one, and he retired. But the Necky, I would say, is a really good machine for the money. I would recommend it for someone who's just getting started with sewing. Because what you start with may not be the one you would be completely satisfied with after you've been sewing for a while. You might see that you want to get into something that has more features to it. Another one that I really like, which I mentioned I have two Elnas, is the Elna. Now I know the Elna and Janome are very similar, like the Brother and the Baby Lock are. But I'm very happy with the Elna. I haven't found anything about it that I didn't like. So Elna is a good one for me. Juki is one I've just picked up this past year. I first got one that's a mechanical, and I really do like it. It is fast, and even though I tell my students, if you're just starting out, I don't want you to sew at a fast speed, because the faster you go, the less accurate you are. But when it comes to doing some strip quilting, it's pretty good to have that speed. So I'm very happy with that. And just recently, I got another Juki. I'm not real sure about it because I haven't had enough time to work on it. The other one that I hadn't mentioned is the Viking. Now, I have to say, for my personal use, I am not a Viking lover. I do have a Viking, but it's the mechanical one that people use when they're quilting or they want to do window treatments, because it only does a straight stitch. And it's a great machine, and I've got 2 or 3 people waiting in line for the day that I decide that I'd like to sell it. But that's not the computerized side of it. I have had a couple of Vikings that were computerized, and I just didn't care for them. And so uh, I can't say that I would recommend that one, but there are people who love Viking, and that's just fine. So when you're thinking, oh gosh, she's giving me a lot of information, I still don't know what to do. I think you have to think about what features you think you would like. And I'm assuming, let's say you have sewn a little bit on a machine. Maybe you've come to one of my classes, or you've got a relative who has one, or a friend, and you've just played around with it a little bit to give you some idea of what it's like to use a sewing machine. But what I look for is how smooth it operates and how quiet it is. I like a quiet machine. And when I step on that foot pedal, I don't want that machine to hesitate before it makes that first stitch. Some of your low-end machines, I call them low-end, other people refer to them as cheap, but I say low-end, they hesitate at the beginning and they just grind, 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 and then finally they take off. So that's a big test for me. When I sit down to use a machine, I want it to just move smoothly from the very beginning. Another thing is I like a knee lift. And I know a lot of people don't think that that's very important, but for me it is. I got used to using a knee lift. A knee lift, by taking your right leg and moving it to the right, will raise and lower the foot. So that frees up both hands to be able to manipulate the fabric as needed. So I really like a knee lift, and I want to have a knee lift with the machine. I'm not buying any more machines that don't have a knee lift. And then thread cutters. Pretty much today, most machines do have thread cutters. Bernina is usually the higher end models. They'll have the thread cutters. But a thread cutter is a nice feature to have, and I would recommend that too. You want to check on that buttonhole too. You want to see how that buttonhole is made and see if you'd be happy with how that is. And you know, unfortunately, this feature is only with the upper end Berninas that I know of, and that they tell you, the machine tells you when it's run out of bobbin thread. And so many times people will be sewing along and they will have just sewed, it seems like a whole lot, and then they discover they were out of bobbin thread because the machine doesn't tell you that it's out of bobbin thread. Only your higher end machines will do that. So let's think again what your options are if you're going to buy a sewing machine. You can buy a new one from a dealer, and you can also buy new ones online, but you're not going to have that dealer support if you do that. You can buy a used machine, and that can be a good option as well, is going with a used machine. Sewing machines are a lot like automobiles. There's a big depreciation with them. So, you know, some people, they want to have the best and the most expensive, and then there are other people that'll just take whatever they can get. But you probably will fall somewhere in between. If you want a new machine that has all the latest features, you might find out that the dealership may have special financing. I know Bernina does that on some of their high-end machines, zero financing. So you could pay it off within 5 years, let's say, and have the advantage of having a top-of-the-line machine. But there's some really good buys on eBay that you can get a machine that's near the top of the line and has a lot of great features for a fraction of the money that you would pay if it were brand new. So you think about the, you have to think about your budget and what you want to spend. I tell people, I don't even touch a machine if it's under $100 because I know it's nothing but junk. And so what I say, I want to enjoy the experience. And if I have to spend all my time threading and rethreading and troubleshooting why the machine's not working properly, I'm not having a good time. So I want to enjoy it. So I'm willing to pay for that. And that way everything goes nice. I'm having a good time, the machine's running properly, and that's the way I feel like it should be. whatever your real passion is, you don't want to say, well, I don't know that I should really spend that much. We only have one life to live. And if we are involved in something that we really like to do, be good to yourself and buy equipment that does work properly, that you enjoy, and you won't regret it. I made the mistake many years ago when long arm quilting started. I couldn't afford a long arm quilter, so they had these little, I don't even know what you would call them. Handy Quilter, I think was the name, and I know the brand is much better today than it was when they first started, but I just had to get a special table and use a regular sewing machine, and it was a mess. Well, anyway, I tried that, and then I tried what they would call a mid-arm. I think I tried 2 mid-arms, and the second mid-arm, it just didn't work. I couldn't get my money back, and so I probably spent enough on those 3 projects, if you want to call it, than if I had just gone on and bought the machine that I'm using today, which is a Gammill, which I absolutely love. It's not the top of the line at all. It doesn't have the computerized package with it, but it's just perfect for me, and I've had it 10 years, and I've never had any problem with it, and I'm a very happy camper when it comes to long arm quilting. What that told me is if I had just maybe done a little bit more research and found some way to maybe finance the purchase of the Gammill in the beginning, because I always knew I wanted a Gammill, but I always said to myself, well, I really can't afford that, so I wouldn't get it. I thought I'd get something else, thinking that might be enough, but it wasn't enough. I was never happy with it. So when I got my Gammill, and by the way, here's another example of a dealer. This dealer was located 3.5 hours from where I live. He brought the machine to my home with his technician. They spent the entire day with me. They showed me exactly what I had to do to service it, how to set it up to use it. At the end of the day, they discovered that there was a broken spring. And then what did they do? The technician came back the following day, which was on a Sunday, spent another 5 hours with me, making sure that I knew what I had to do to use that machine. Now that to me is a great dealer. And before I ever made that decision to buy the Gammill, he invited me to come to his shop, bring the quilt that I had been doing on this other, with this other long arm that didn't work. And he told me I could bring my quilt down there and quilt on one of his to see how I felt about it, and for me to be able to finish the quilt, because it was for a customer and not for myself. And then another example with my Berninas, I called the dealer 2.5 hours from here, and I asked him on a certain day if it would be possible for me to bring my machine to his shop and that he would fix it that same day. I go have lunch, I come back, I pick up the machine, and I'm home. So it's all in a one-day event for me to get my machine serviced. You know, some dealers aren't willing to work with you, but if you shop around, you're going to find good ones. They are out there, and then there are some bad ones, and I've had both. One last thing I'm going to suggest, if you're thinking of buying a machine and there is a dealership in your town that has more than one brand, most dealers usually have 2 brands, like Brother and Baby Lock, or Baby Lock and Bernina, Pfaff and Janome. Sometimes there's a dealership that has several brands. Well, whether you have to go to one dealer or you have to go to 3 dealers, I don't care. But you make it a point to not take your credit card with you, to not take your checkbook with you, and you go to their store and you try their machines. You just sit down and you just try them out and listen to what they say to you, and don't make any decision at that time, and walk away from it, and then you got time to think about it and look at what other options that you could possibly have. So by doing that, I think you'll be more comfortable in what your final decision is. But I stay away from the idea of I'm just going to go out and pick up a little machine at Walmart, and because I don't really care that much about how much I do. But I feel like in the long run, if you really do enjoy it, that won't satisfy what you want to do. I don't usually make recommendations, but when it comes to your first machine, I would say if you need to be in the 200 to 300 range, that the Brother is a good one for that. And it does have all plastic parts, but it's a good beginner machine. But I'm talking about, like I say, between $200 and $300. They do have models, I think, less than that, but I have not had good experience with any brand that's in the $50 to $100 range. They're just not worth even that. So why throw your money away? Just save it up until you can buy something better. Well, I hope this is going to help you and that you do buy a machine, because I don't think you'll be disappointed if you think you like to sew. It's such a wonderful thing to learn and to do. It brings you so much joy. If you want to get in touch with me, go to my website, SewMuchFunKY.com, and send me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, because there may be some things that I didn't think of that you want more information. But regardless, if you do want to begin or continue with your sewing experience, please do, because sewing is such a wonderful activity. I think you won't be disappointed, and I know you're going to have so much fun.